Now let that sink in. We've got a world of free creatures, but they can't be free, and yet they're made to do only what's right. So if they're free, but God makes them, then they're not really free. If they're free, but there's only one choice, they're not really free, right? He says, for if he does so, then they aren't significantly free after all. They do not do what is right freely to create creatures capable of moral good. Therefore, he must create creatures capable of moral evil. And he can't give these creatures the freedom to perform evil and at the same time prevent them from doing so. Human free will is the capacities that we possess. Um, so what does it mean to be God? What is it, when we talk about God's nature, we talk about circumstantial will, and his ideal will, his ultimate will. But then we also talk about the will of man. So in talking about suffering, we're talking about the intersection of something we personally experience in light of the will of God, right? So when we talk about the will of man, we're talking about his capacities for various aspects of life. We have the capacity to think and reason. We talk about our consciousness. Consciousness has to do with being self aware. So, again, that can be divided into general, personal, or social consciousness, social awareness. We have intellectual capacity, that is the ability to think. We have the ability to communicate. We're verbal. We have nonverbal communication as well as verbal. We have volition. Volition has to do with freedom of will. Autonomy has to do with self determination. We have agency, which is the capacity to make choices, liberty to do it freely. We can be intentional in our choices. That is, we have understanding and we can have self motivation. That is, we're not a rock. We can be moved. We have self control. Bible has a lot to say about that. We have a sense of time. We have the ability to change. We have the ability to desire, to be motivated. We have the ability to intend certain things. And so I've got a little bit about motive and intent and action there. That is kind of borrowed from ethics class. I won't go through all that. We have the capacity to reason in sense of what's moral or immoral, a sense of right or wrong. See, all of these are intertwined in the will, right? We have a conscience which looks forward and says, hey, if I commit adultery, that's evil. If I stay pure to my covenant, that my conscience excuses me, right? So it's prospective, and retrospective means it looks backwards. I could look back and say, hey, stealing shoes is sinful. It violated my conscience. It violated some, you know, um, I violated a company. I stole from somebody, right? So that's retrospective. Um, so the conscience looks forward, it looks backwards, it makes judgments in the moment. The Bible has a lot to say about conscience: a good conscience, a weak conscience, a pure conscience, a seared conscience, a clear conscience, an ignorant conscience, and lots is said about the conscience. We have a creative capacity, that is, the ability to do things with our hands and bring things into being from the material world and things of that nature. We have the ability to feel. That's our emotional capacity. Why do I go into all that detail? Well, because in suffering, human suffering, when we talk about our human capacity, we're talking about the human will, and it intersects our ability to speak, to move, to intend, to think, to reason, to exercise self-control, to change. Like, suffering intersects all of these human aspects of man. And so it is a bit of a detailed element to it, but I just want us to see that in all of those things, there's we have human capacity.